So you're brand new to Baldur Gates and you're brand new to the D&D role-playing experience, and you saw amazing futures, gameplay, storytelling if it comes to Baldur Gates and in D&D franchises in generally. And you are a pen paper enthusiast if it comes to the D&D gameplay mechanics and a gameplay genre. And now you're wondering yourself, how should I start with this game itself? We have 12 different characters, unique races, but which one fits me the best? Well, first of all, let me tell you one thing. It doesn't matter which race that you pick, every single race are amazing and every single class are unique. And yes, you can clear every single content within this game with the race and the class of your choosing. So choose one that fits you and speaks to you the most, because that's the role-playing experience you're truly going to have, and that's the point of a D&D role-playing experience. But you're still very much interested to understand which class it truly is the best, which class is considered as an S tier, an A tier and a B tier class, which class is truly is the class and race that fits to each other perfectly in form of aesthetic links, lore, and truly the min-maxing the in-game experience. So within this tier list and in this class overview within Kalunga Games, I'm going to give you my thought, my feedback as a gamer itself, an RPG lover, and of course in D&D pen paper enthusiasts, which are the best classes for you to enjoy if you truly want to min-max to the finest details your playthrough within Baldur Gate itself. If this content you truly like and you appreciate it, do not hesitate to push that thumbs up. Give me a thought in the comments down below what you think about every single thing you heard so far, if I'm right or wrong, and most importantly, if you have additional information for us gamers to give, do not be shy about it, because it can only help myself, but also help a fellow gamer itself to understand which truly is the best classes, and of course the overall picture of how you could interact with all these classes itself. Thank you very much for being here, and thank you very much for chilling, and thank you very much for considering Kalunga Games as your channel to be for your gaming entertainments. So let's start first in the class overview on which are these classes and what they actually do. For the very first class that we're gonna take a close look at, of course, is the Barbarian itself. The Barbarian is a very powerful strength-based class which focuses himself and melee focused type of a combat, and has a very high health and berserker rage mode. On the other hand, for a secondary class, we have the charismatic base class, a utility class with a minor healing ability, buffs, debuffs, and a plenty of charm. The one and only the Bard. With tons of flexibility and high charisma, they are a great pick for any team composition for beginning or even advanced type of gamers itself, especially for those who are considering making this your main character. And then we have, of course, the Cleric, a wisdom based class, sturdy, strong, with healing and buffing spells. On the other hand, the Druid, a wisdom focused caster with both offensive and restoration abilities and shape-shifting powers that makes them the most flexible of all classes. The Fighter, on the other hand, is a versatile strength-based class that is equal at home in melee or at range. They can also use all armors, most weapons, and can stack multiple attacks per turn to demolish their enemies. His counterpart is the Monk, the Minimalist, the dexterity-based class, which is focused on dealing high unarmed damage, being nimble, and using wisdom to supplement the armor class. For holy warriors amongst ourselves, we have the Paladin, which is sworn by his oath. These are strength-based warriors and stout and powerful, able to hit hard with weapons and heal and harden defenses with the spells, follow the tenets of the oaths, or face the consequences. And class that's unique for those who truly have or want a unique role-playing experience. The Ranger, this is a dexterity-based class which excels in combat at range, but can also engage up to close quarter combat. Although they lack in the high defense of most of other melee classes, the tame beast evens the odds quite often. The rogue, on the other hand, there is no lock this dexterity based class cannot open. They excel in range combat, bonus and sneak attacks damage, and bring utility in dealing with traps and locks. The sorcerer, this charismatic based spellcaster, is all about quantity and flexibility. While they know a smaller number of spells compared to the wizards, they don't need to be prepared for them to use in battle. Instead, letting them choose whichever spell they want in the moment itself, spending sorcery points to increase the functionality. The warlock, on the other hand, knowing the fewest spells of all the spellcasters, charms-based warlock always casts them at the highest level possible, meaning fewer spells that packs up a bigger punch. They also have an access to better armor and more weaponry. The primary cantrip, the Eldritch Blast, is a very, very powerful spells which becomes even more powerful as you level up. Meaning they can trade versatility to be the most consistent of all casters. As far as the damage dealing considered, is this class arguably the most powerful on all classes if it comes to cast by cast basic. The Wizards is a classic spellcaster. This intelligent based class is the most versatile, but also requires the most preparation. You can spend gold to learn spells from scrolls, permanently adding them to your spell books. Sometimes warlocks, sorcerers cannot do this, but you will need to memorize a spell of each of your spell slots and prepare for what you think will come next. Within Baldur Gate, you have a totality of 11 different races that you can pick, choose and play on. Every single race is different, every single race is unique, and some of these races have a different form of subclasses. And how you portray in the world itself is also going to depend on the race that you pick. Some races are favorable to the others and the other ones are not. So your choice is really going to depend on your role-playing experience, which type of race you eventually plays on. But every race does something a little bit unique and a little bit differently. First off, let's start about the very first race on our list. Let's talk about the High Elves itself. A very unique race and the most common race if it comes to the role-playing and the fantasy experience. Elves are considered by signature pointy ears, but apart from this, they look a lot like humans. In regards to how they play, all elves in Baldur Gate 3 can move up to 9 meters per turn, see in the dark up to 12 meters, and have an advantage in saving throws. Against being charmed, magic can be put to sleep, and are proficient with long swords, short swords and long bows. Within the elf, you have two different extinguished races. You have the High Elf, and of course you have the Wood Elf. The High Elf themselves are described the heirs of the mythical Feywild. High Elves are valuable magic in all of its forms. Even those who do not study spellcraft can manipulate the weaves. This race feature can move up to 9 meters per turn, see in the dark up to 12 meters, and has an advantage in saving throw against being charmed. Magic cannot put them to sleep, and proficiency when it comes to long swords, short bows and long bows. On the other hand, the Wood Elves themselves, these elves spend their entire life in a recurrent lives in the Faerun forests, dedicated of training in archery and camouflage, enhanced by the otherworldly swiftness. This race have an ability to move up to 9 meters per turn, see in the dark for 12 meters, and has an advantage in saving throws against being charmed. Magic cannot put them to sleep, and also have a proficiency into long swords, short bows, short swords, and long swords. The bonus feature for this race, a fleet of foot. Movement speed is increased by 1.5 meters. The best races for these classes are: for the high elf is the wizard and the sorcerer. But on the other hand, for the wood elf, the best race for this class is of course the monk, the ranger, the barbarian, the paladin, the fighter, and the rogue. The tiefling race are horn humanoid race, descended from the devils of the 9 hells. In regards to how they play, all tieflings race in Baldur Gate 3 can move up to 9 meters per turn, see in the dark up to 12 meters, and take half damage comes to fire. There are in totally of 3 different sub-races if it comes to the tiefling race. The first of all is the Asmodeus tiefling. Second of all, my apologies, I'm definitely gonna repronounce this completely wrong. The Mephitopolitis tiefling. That's a mouthful. And of course, the last but not least, you have the Zariel tiefling. If it comes to the Asmodeus tiefling, they are bound to Nessus, the deepest layer of hell. These tiefling inherit the ability to wield fire and darkness from the archdevil Asmodeus, infernal bloodline. Like I said, this race feature can move up to 9 meters per turn, see in the dark for 12 meters, and take half damage from fire itself to the fire resistance. Bonus to all of this, they produce flame cantrip, shed light in 9 meters radius, and deal 1.8 fire damage when thrown. For its counterpart sub-race, Mephitopolis tiefling, they are the descendant from the archdevil Mepha, whatever his name is. These tiefling are gifted with a particular affinity for arcane. This race can move up to 9 meters per turn, see in the dark for 12 meters, and take half damage from fire through the fire resistance. The bonus they have is Mage Hand's cantrip. Create a spectral hand that can manipulate and interact with objects. For the last of this race, you have the Zariel tiefling. Tiefling from Zariel bloodline are empowered with the martial art strength, can channel searing flame to punish their enemies. This race can move again for 9 meters per turn, see in the dark for 12 meters, and take half damage if as well comes to fire through the fire resistance. The bonus they have the Taumaturgi cantrip, gain advantage on intimidation and performance checks. But which is the best race, of course, if it comes to this class, or better say which is the best class for this race? Well, if it comes to the tiefling itself, the best race if it comes to the Asmodeus tiefling is the bard, the warlock, and the rogue. If it comes to the Mephitopolis tiefling, their best classes are the bard, the warlock, and the rogue. But on the other hand, the Zariel tiefling, the best classes for this race is the paladin, the bard, and the warlock. The Dwan race are sometimes referred to as comes to the dark elves, due to the history within the evil goddess Loth. With the Selduin drows, they follow her. Drows resemble as elves with similar pointy ears, but tend to have a bluer skin shapes. Regardless of their lineage, all drows in Baldur Gate 3 can move up to 9 meters per turn, see in the dark up to 24 meters, have an advantage for saving throw against being charmed. Magic cannot put them to sleep, and they have proficiency in rapier, short swords and hand crossbows. Within the drow race, they have two different forms of sub-races, the Lost Sworn Drows and the Saldarin Drows. The Lost Sworn Dwarf, raised by Loth, cult in the city of Minzoperans. These drow embody the future of the corrupt and merciless goddess. Loth makes her follow her bright eyes red, so those in the underdark will learn to fear them on sight. This race, of course, can move up to 9 meters per turn, see in the dark for 24 meters, have an advantage for saving throws, and cannot be charmed or put to sleep, and have proficiency in rapier, short bows, short swords, and hand crossbow. If it comes to bonuses, they have none. The Saldarin Drow can be found seeking allies from all over Faerun, aiming to settle their conflict with Loth and each other by any means necessary. This race has a unique feature to move 9 meters per turn, see in the dark up to 12 meters, and have an advantage in saving throws against being charmed. Magic cannot put them to sleep. And once again, they have proficiency in rapier, short swords and crossbows. For this race as well, if it comes to bonus, they have none. But now you're wondering which is the best class, of course, if it comes to this race as well. Well, if it comes to the Drow race, the Lost Sworn Drow, the best classes for this race is the Sorcerer, the Wizards, the Rogue, the Bard, the Warlock, and the Druid. If it comes to the Saldarin Drow, this race, the best race for this class, of best classes for this race, is the Sorcerer, the Wizard, the Rogue, the Bard, the Warlock, and the Druid. The human race are the most versatile if it comes to Baldur Gate himself. They have no different sub-races, but they can be described as the most common phase in Faerun. Humans are known for their tenacity, creativity, and endless capacity of growth. This race feature can move up to 9 meters per turn, and select an additional skill to be proficient in. Have the carry capacity increased by a quarter. I have proficiency with spear, spike, halberd, cleaves, light armors, and shields. If it comes to race bonuses, they do not have one. But if it comes to which classes that this race truly is the best in, or excels the best, well, if it comes to the humans, they have no sub-race, but the best classes for them is the Fighter, the Barbarian, the Wizards, the Sorcerer, and of course the Paladin. If it comes to the Githyanki race, the Githyanki race resembles the closest to the Orcs, with the green shade and pointy ears, and their aggression terms from Mind Flayers, enslavement. The Githyanki have no sub-race. And the description of an Githyanki with a ruthless born from Mind Flayer enslavement, Githyanki rides the Astra Sea atop of the Red Dragons, bringing the silver sword and psionic might to bear against any trace of lethal menace. This race can move up to 9 meters per turn, have proficiency if it comes to light armor, medium armor, short swords, long swords, and of course gate swords. If it comes to bonuses, if it comes to this race, it has the astral knowledge, gain proficiency in skills of your chosen ability, Githyanki psionics, mage hand cantrip, create an invisible spectral hand that can manipulate and interact with objects, of course. But what is the best race if it comes to best class, if it comes to this race? This race excels the most if you are playing, of course, with the Rogue, the Bard, and of course the Warlock. The Dwarf race are a short humanoid people who makes some of the finest warriors, miners, and smiths in Faerun. All dwarves can move up to 7.5 meters per turn, see in the dark up to 12 meters, and advantage on saving throws against poison, having resistance to poison damage, and have proficiency with battle axe, hand axe, light arm hammers, and of course war hammers. There are 3 different subclasses if it comes to this unique race. You have the golden dwarf, the shield dwarf, and Durgar. The golden dwarf, these dwarves are known for their confidence and unique intuition. The culture of the deep kingdom values family, ritual, and of course fine craftsmanship. The race feature can move up to 7.5 meters per turn, see in the dark up to 12 meters, has an advantage on saving throws against poison, have a natural resistance against poison, are proficient with battle axe, hand axe, light hammers, and of course war hammers. If it comes to the race bonus themselves, these dwarves have a dwarven toughness. Hit points maximized increased by 1, increased by 1 again every turn you level up. The shield dwarf great losses in ancient wars against the goblins and the orc have led these dwarves to adopt a cynical mindsets, but they will endure anything to restore them ancestral home. Once again, they have the same feature if it comes to the previous dwarven race. The bonus that comes to this dwarf, they have a dwarven armor training, armor proficiency with light and medium armor. The Durag, once enslaved by the Eldritch Mind Flayers, the Durag adapt to freedom with harsh particularity. The Call, Demurers, and Gift of Stealth are well known through the Underdog. Once again, they have the same proficiency if it comes to movement, 7.5, and see in the dark for 12 meters, and have resistance against poisons with the natural poisons resistance they have. But if it comes to bonus of this race, they have a superiority dark vision, can see in the dark up to 24 meters. And Durag Resilience has advantages on saving throws against illusions and being charmed or paralyzed. If it comes to which class is of course the best if it comes to a dwarf, the dwarf excel himself in, if it comes to the golden dwarfs, the golden dwarf excel himself in fighters, paladins, barbarian, and cleric. On the other hand, the shield dwarf excel in sorcery, wizards, bard, and warlock. The Durag excel in rogue, cleric, and paladin. The half elf, on the other hand, are the pointy ears and are curious, ambitious, and versatile, and welcome everywhere in Faerun. The half elf race can move up to 9 meters per turn, see in the dark for 12 meters, and have an advantage against saving throws, being charmed, and magic cannot put them to sleep. They have a proficiency with pike halberds, cleaves, light armor, and shields. There are 3 different forms of sub-races if it comes to the high elf itself. There are the high elf, the wood elf, and the dwarf elf. The high half elf are touched by Feywild, remain in high and half elf with the bloodline, even those untrained and magic possess an hint and wild power. This race feature can move up to 9 meters per turn, see in the dark for 12 meters, have an advantage on saving throws against being charmed. Magic cannot put them to sleep, and of course have proficiency when it comes to pikes, halberds, glaives, light armor, and of course shields. They have an extra cantrip slab. The wood half elf, like the wood elf parents, these half elf have a quick stride and eye for stealth, yet mainly break away from isolation and firing forwards to explore the rest of the realms. This race has an unique feature for he can move from 9 meters per turn, see in the dark up to 12 meters, has an advantage on saving throws against being charmed, Magic cannot put them to sleep, and of course has a proficiency with pike, halberds, glaives, and of course light armor and shields. The bonus they have is a fleet of foot. Movement speed is increased by 1.5 meters. The drone half-elf. Most half-drones result from liaison between Seldarin drones and surfaces. While half-drones inherit a few magical gifts, they aren't usually raised in the dark. Can move up to 9 meters per turn, see in the dark for 12 meters, and has an advantage against saving throws, same thing as the previous encounters. The bonus that comes to this race having a dancing light cantrip, illuminates and are on a radius of 9 meters. The best classes for this race. This race is a bit unique if it comes to how the best classes are. If it comes to the drawn half-elf, they are very proficient if it comes to warlock, wizards and sorcery. The high elf are very strong wizards, and the wood half-elf are monks, clerics, paladins, fighters and barbarians are the races that it truly excels on. If it comes to the halfling are the most small-like, hobbit-like races within Baldur Gate themselves. They prefer a comfort of their home, but having a natural luck and dexterity, all halfling races can move up to 7.5 meters per turn, have an advantage on saving throws against being frightened, and when rolling a 1 on your dice for an attack roll, you have an ability check or saving throws. You can re-roll your die, but you must choose the new outcome. If it comes to the halflings themselves, the halflings have two distinguished different forms of sub-races. The first one is the Lightfoot halfling, and then you have the strong-hearted halfling. The Lightfoot halfling, they have a keen tendency in stealth but very social. These halflings travel all over Faerun to make names for themselves. Like I said and I mentioned previously, it's equal for both halflings. This race feature can move up to 7.5 meters per turn, have an advantage on saving throws against being frightened, and when you're rolling a 1 on your die for an attack roll, you have an ability check or saving throw. You can re-roll the die, but you must choose a new outcome. If it comes to the bonus of this unique race, the natural stealth they have has an advantage on stealth checks. On the other hand, the strong-hearted halfling, legend says that the dwarven blood gave the strong-hearted halfling the hardiness, resistance to poisons and half springs of endurance. This halfling easily hold their own. If it comes to race feature, it is similar to the previous race. But the bonus of this race, they have a strong-hearted resilience and advantage on saving throws against poisons and natural resistance to poison damage. But what is the best races for, of course, this unique classes themselves? When it comes to the light-footed halfling, the best class for this unique race is the rogue and the bard. But on the other hand, the strong-hearted halfling, the best class for this race is the fighter, the cleric, paladin, the barbarian and the druid. Gnomes on the other hand are very quite similar in form of appearance to the halfling, but they have pointy ears, and they are well known to being very clever and energetic. All gnomes races in Baldur Gate 3 can move over 7 meters per turn and have an advantage on intelligence, wisdom and charisma saving throws. If it comes to the gnome, you have 3 different sub-races. You have your rock gnome, your forest gnome and your deep gnome. Your rock gnome, these are the most common seen in gnomes in Faerun surface. Rock gnomes are named as such for their hardiness and affinity for metal. This race feature can move up to 7.5 meters per turn and have an advantage on intelligence, wisdom and charisma saving throws. The bonuses of this raid have the dark vision. You can see in the dark up to 12 meters, an artificier lore, and add twice your proficiency if it comes to bonus to history checks. The forest gnome on the other hand are even smaller than their cousins and twice as repulsive than the forest gnomes. The forest gnomes are a rare sight in Faerun. They are masters magic and craftsmanships, and the distance idyllic groves. Same thing as the previous race, they have the same form of race features, but in form of the race bonus, they have dark vision. You can see in the dark up to 12 meters and speak with animal spells, using animal spells. Gain the ability to comprehend and communicate with beasts. Then you have the deep gnome, more guarded than their surface cousins. Deep gnomes survive in the dark underdark, with dark vision and a skillful stealth. Same race feature as the previous cousins, but the bonus have a superior darker vision, can see up to 24 meters in the dark. They have a stone camouflage and advantage in stealth checks. But now you wonder where it is the best race, of course, if it comes to this unique race. If it comes to the rock gnome are very strong if you're playing a class like the wizard and the bard. The forest gnome are very strong if you're playing with a bard, sorcerer, warlock, and a paladin. And the deep gnome are very strong if you are playing, of course, with the deep tendency for rogue playstyles and the bard. The Dragonborn race. The Dragonborn are an unsurprising look a lot like dragons. Their many sub-races determine the future against the actions they get. The only common feature shared by all dragons is the 9 meter movement limit per turn. There are 10 different forms of dragons sub-races. You have your black dragon, your blue dragons, your braised dragons, your bronze dragons, your copper dragons, your gold dragons, your green dragons, your red dragons, your silver dragons, and of course your white dragons. Every single dragon are very unique. The black dragons, despite the non-ancestral link towards the mighty creatures, these dragons born share the charcoal colorization and fizzle astrid breath of black dragons. The race feature is similar for all dragons, is 9 meter per turn. The bonus for this dragon type is the acid breath, spew forth on cone, an acid that deals 2 to 12 damage, and a draconic ancestry resistant to acid damage. On the other hand, the blue dragon, despite the non-ancestral link to the mighty dragons himself, these dragonborn share the deep sapphire scale and share the kraken breath of the blue dragons. Similar races feature as previously. But the bonus for this dragon, the lightning breath, spew forth a cone of lightning that deals 2 to 12 damage. A draconic ancestry resistance against lightning damage. The braised dragons, same thing, not linked to the mighty dragons of the previous era, but they share a burnish orchard hue and flickering breath of braised dragons. The bonus for this dragon is fire breath, spew forth a column of fire deals 12 damage, and the draconic ancestry and resistance to fire damage itself. The bronze damage, same thing, no similar link towards the future mighty dragons, but share a shiny syphilis scale and sparking breath of bronze dragons. The bonus for this dragon is lightning breath. Spew a lightning damage that deals 2 to 12 damage, and draconic ancestry the resistance to lightning damage. The copper, on the other hand, They have a bonus against acid breath, spewing forth a cone of acid that deals 2 to 12 damage, and the draconic ancestry resistance to acid damage. The golden dragon have a fire breath that deals 12 damage and have an ancestry resistance against fire damage. The green dragon have a poison breath that deals 12 damage and a draconic ancestry resistance to poison damage. The red dragon have the fire breath that deals 12 damage and a resistance to fire damage. The silver dragon, despite same thing, no link to the previous era of dragons, have the frost breath, spew damage for 12 damage, and draconic ancestry resistance to cold damage. The white dragons has frost breath, similar damage output, and of course draconic ancestry to cold resistance. Now if it comes to the dragon race and the dragonborn race, you're wondering, there are so many of them, which is the best? Of course, if it comes to the unique race. For every single one of these dragons, they all have the same form of tendency, which they'll excel in towards to. The best class to play any dragon that you see fit here is going to be the sorcerer, the wizard, the barbarian, the fighter, and of course the paladin. Half orcs have a tendency to be emotional, then translate within the fighting and endurance. Half orc have no subrace. Description of this unique race is a creature of intense emotions. Half orcs are more inclined to act than contemplate. Whether the rage burning their bodies compels them to fight, or the love filling their hearts inspire acts of incredible kindness. This race have a unique feature that can move to 9 meters per turn, see in the dark for 12 meters, regain 1 HP instead of becoming downed when at 0 HP, and when landing a critical hit with a melee weapon attack damage, dice are tripled instead of doubled. The bonus of this race, there is none. Now, you wonder which is the best race, of course, to play an half orc, better say the best class to play an half orc. The best classes to play an half orc are the fighters, the barbarian, the paladin, the cleric, monk, and rogue. Now, you're probably wondering yourself, between all the different classes you have here, and they're all unique, they are very powerful, but which are at this point truly are the S tier classes, the A tier classes, and of course the B tier classes. Mind that this is just a temporary list, and it's probably going to be changed themselves according to different patches that's coming in the future of this beautiful game. Certain things will be rewritten, certain things will going to be rechanged. So the classes that I consider right now as the best classes, if it comes to Baldur Gate itself, might be, and the next patch completely different. But at this point, as we are standing right now enjoying this beautiful game, these are the best classes and the most powerful classes if it comes to Baldur Gate itself. Once again, I might be wrong, it might be your favorite class might be in my list in A tier or B tier, but it does not mean that these classes are bad. Every single class are unique, every single class are amazing, and every single class can do every single content that this game has to offer. That being said, the very first S tier class that we have right now is the Bard. The Bard is one reason why they are an S tier class, because they are a jack of all trades. And wait for a second, let me try to explain this, the reason why I'm considering this. It truly is one of the best classes we can start with. Bards are skilled with both range and have a decent form of melee weapons ability. They have spells and they have healing abilities. They have buffs and they have debuffs. Bards are great as a main character because they rely on charisma, meaning you are able to convert yourself out of different form of checks and situations. Much easier than a barbarian, my favorite class in the game, which makes this playthrough and your experience with Baldur Gate, which has a ton of versatility, if you're playing with a bard. The secondary S tier class, of course, is the cleric. Cleric has been for the longest time considered one of the best classes in Dungeons and Dragons, and with Baldur Gate 3 that hasn't been changed for 1 second. There are true Chad and medium and heavy armor, wielding variety of spells including wide range of healings and of course buffing abilities. Cleric will make sure your party makes it through even the toughest encounters. The other S tier class, of course, is the Paladin. Paladins are part of the S tier list for several reasons. They have a very strong durability, they're strong themselves, a lot of utility in the spell books, trading the cleric spells utility for the ability of pure damage dealing physical aspect of a paladin with a unique 2 large weapons. The paladin has an excellent combat for frontline combats with a variety of diversity and form of magic as well. Ability to bless, heal and use holy smite ability to bring pain to the enemy itself, particularly painful against undead and Baldur Gate 3. The sorcerer is another S tier class. Sorcerer might be a little bit limited in the form of spells contrary to the wizard counterparts and cousins, but they don't have a reliable sustained access to damage as the warlock with the Eldritch Blast. But the sorcerer might mix every spell counts. They can turn on a dime, being able to choose any spell they know at the moment without memorizing, and the use of sorcery points to twin cast it. Makes it further than more useful than the warlock itself. If it comes to the A tier class, now remember this tier represent classes with a high level of power. While they may have flaws, they are still very strong in the area, are stronger more in certain form of area than the previous choices. They are excellent in the form and team combatants, and of course they are very unique in their own classes as well. The very first A tier class that I personally consider my favorite class is the Barbarian. The Barbarian himself is a great class that is completely dedicated in dealing melee damage and throwing stuff all over the place. While they are not so flexible as the fighter, the Barbarians are fantastic at what they do, which is smash things around with rage and swiftness against the enemies. The Ranger, on the other hand, are a secondary A tier class. Ranger are another flexible damage dealing class with a bit of utility as well. They can stay at range while dealing good damage. They can enhance party members' attacks with Hunter's Mark, and depending on your preferred subclasses, they can even add fighters to the fray with the Beastmaster Companion mode. They are also limited in form of spellcasting ability, which lets them to do some minor healing and more. The other A tier class is the Rogue. Rogue are incredibly helpful to have in your squad, with the ability to weave in and out of stealth during combat, and they have very burst damage and outside of the combats. They bring tons of utility, stealth wherever it's nailed down, pick locks to gain access to every chest and room, and generally be where you aren't supposed to be. A rogue can get there. They can also do good damage from range and have a lot of common with the ranger itself in certain regards. The other A tier class, of course, is the Warlock. Warlock don't have the flexibility of Sorcerer, but they don't have it all encompassing nature of the Wizard spellbook. As a matter of fact, the Warlock have an access to fewer spells of any spellcasting class in the game itself, but the ones they have is incredibly powerful. The spells are always cast in the highest possible tier level. Eldritch Blast is a candidate with effectiveness and same power as a spell slot ability. It gains power as you level up your character. They also have a skill in melee combats, with proficiency in rapier and other similar weapons. Although you should be very careful when taking them into the front lines. The other A tier class, of course, is the Wizards. The wizard can do all manner of ridiculous things: unlock doors, cast fogs, do obfuscate combats, encounters, call down grease pools, teleport, charm people, and the list goes on and on and on, and it's almost nearly forever. Wizards can also learn spells from scrolls you find or buy with a modest gold payments, and the ability, among others, make wizards the most flexible and versatile, tedious of all spellcasters in Baldur Gate 3. If you have a mind for absolute min-maxing, the skill of scaling with a wizard is quite high. And if you don't have the patience for managing all of that, you'll be safer choosing a vastly and more nimble class like the sorcerer. And last but not least, if it comes to, of course, our B tier, of course, the class itself. Remember, class B are missing that special something that makes them an S tier or an A tier character. Whatever their abilities are, they are now the weak version of the other classes themselves, but it's just them missing a little oomph to really makes them excel a little bit better. The first class, of course, that we have on our list is the druid. The druids have a unique ability to shapeshift, as well as access to a pool of spells. The druids are very flexible as a class, but fortunately they end up in the B tier because they have a strength of none. They have many strengths, but none of them particularly notable. Particularly compared to other classes who had fewer possibility from as roles. Jack of all trades, master of none, indeed. And then of course we have the monk. The monk is an interesting class that, like the druid, doesn't excel in any other category, which is unfortunate because they really rely on only having a focus dealing melee damage. They have been said, if you like characters that have a free movements and have a martial art flavor, you can still make room for one in your team. And that's it, guys. This is a completely tier list if it comes to Baldur Gate 3, the different classes, my perspective of different classes, and of course what every single class do. And hopefully everything was understandable, and if it did do some pronunciation problems, my deepest apologies for the Anglo-Saxons among us, because English is not my first language. For all those who chill with me all the way to the end, that means you did enjoy yourself, and our only thing I'll ask personally, just give that thumbs up, give me your thoughts in the comments down below. I am correct in form of the tier lists. What is the thing I had it wrong? What is your favorite class and just in generally, and what is your experience so far if it comes to Baldur Gates? For me personally, this game is game of the year, hands down, above every single other games out there, and it is absolutely a masterpiece like we've never seen before. My review of this game is coming very soon, so stick around and I'll give you my honest thought about every single thing that I saw, played and enjoyed. I'm still enjoying and I'm still streaming. Of course, by streaming aspect, you can always catch me on the daily schedule on my Twitch page, and it's also named as Alan Lusavu. That is me personally. Or you can also catch me here on YouTube behind every single video, shorts, and every single thing that I do, of course, within my YouTube channel. Let's play and gameplay walkthroughs. Any other questions you may have for me, you can always reach me on Discord, Instagram, Twitter or Twitch. Over any other social media pages as a link in my channel. It's literally one click button away and you get yourself straight to the presented page. Once again, thank you very much. Merci beaucoup pour être ici avec moi. And hopefully I can see every single one of you on my next guide, on my next let's play, next stream, etc. and etc. Stay safe out there. Merci beaucoup encore. Thank you much again. And keep on game on. Game on, friends. Game on, family. Like usually, one love only. Peace.